Welcome in, email geeks, to the Kevin Mandeville Show here on YouTube. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m., I'm live coming at you with latest news and email, talking about email resources. It's just a fun grab bag of all things email for you every single week. And be sure to subscribe here both on YouTube, give the subscribe button a little smash, and you can go to kevinmandeville.com/newsletter, get on my email newsletter, get some email goodies delivered right to your inbox. Special shout out to Email Tees, official apparel for email geeks, like this lovely little winter hat here, keeping my noggin nice and warm. It's official apparel for email geeks. So upgrade your wardrobe in 2019. Get some email swag. Let your inner email geek out into the world. So news has been a little slow this week, but so today what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go over sort of one thing. It's going to be another one topic sort of episode. I'm testing this format out to see how you like it. And I want to talk about email trends you should care about in 2019. So Chad White over at Litmus came out with a new post recently over the top email trends in 2019 for email. And this was based off of survey done on the Litmus blog. It had about 250 people answering, which is really, when you deal with polling, you know, the first handful really indicate what the trend is going to be. So even if this was 2,000 people, like the full State of Email yearly survey, which fill out, by the way, if you haven't yet, Litmus's State of Email survey, it's still going to hold true. So I want to talk about what were the key things that stood out to me, things I agree with and things I disagree with. So the top two items for 2019, the top two trends, are the exact same from 2018. They swap places. So this year, the number one trend is focusing more on personalization and dynamic content at 40.7%. That was the number two trend last year at 39.5%. And again, this was a sort of select all that apply question. This didn't limit options at all. So this is really unlimited for what people wanted to focus in on. But that pretty much stayed constant there, jumped from number two to number one. And the number two item is creating interactive email experiences. This year it's at 32%. Last year it was at 44.1%. So interactive email has jumped down a little bit, although it's still ranking high in terms of overall trend, which I think is more important than the actual percentage base to focus on here for a report like this. And so I think focusing more on personalization and dynamic content, that's always the heart of email design and marketing. And that's always going to be a key challenge, right? We always want to make sure, how can we personalize this experience as much as possible to create as relevant of an experience for a user? So that makes sense to me. I agree with that. And that should always be key and at the top of our mind, is how can we make it feel as if it's being sent from one human to another, as personal as possible. Creating interactive email, there's always been a lot of talk about interactive email, that it's the hot new thing, it's the hot new trend. And to be honest with you, I don't even know that interactive email has been much of a trend over the past few years, even though it's definitely had a rise in terms of its claim to fame. There's been some really cool individual examples, but in terms of a trend that's adopted by the masses, I just haven't seen it. If you look at your inbox, I would imagine you're still seeing a lot of image-based emails that are still struggling with responsive and making just pure, live text accessible type of emails. I haven't seen a lot of brands actually do interactive email. Now, that's not to say that there aren't great opportunities for interactive email, because I believe that there are. And especially as somebody who's done a lot of interactive email, and that's something that I specialize in, especially if you're in e-commerce or any type of transaction and facilitating a transaction, I think interactive email is very beneficial whenever you can reduce the amount of clicks for an end user. So the less friction that you create for a user inside of an email, I think it's better. So if you can save clicks from a user who's going out to a landing page, that's something you should be striving for. And that to me is probably the most beneficial aspect of interactive email, or maybe I should say the most applicable for most brands that can get widespread mass adoption. But for most people, interactive email will only ever be a small percent of the emails that you send out. Again, unless you have an e-commerce or transaction-based type of business to where you can even build that into transactional emails, if you're doing more of the marketing aspect of interactive email, it's probably going to be few and far between. You're going to just want to select certain points of important emails, important dates, important things you're trying to promote to create a cool experience around that you can provide a more immersive experience for users. But I guess what I would say is interactive email is good, but you need a good use case for it. And so it's not something that it needs to be every single email that you do. Even I, who specialize in it, even for my own emails, I don't send out every single email with interactive components. You need to pick and choose your spots there. So just be wary of that. But I think interactive email is a big thing. Number 3 on this year, this surprised me a lot, allowing AI and machine learning systems to determine more email content. And I have to ask, really? Really? AI is and I say this because I don't even think AI know what is a trend in 29 with AI yet, let alone for email. I mean, what exactly? I would love to know. And this is a question I'm putting out for everybody out there. Who on earth is actually using AI in email right now for like this year with actual content and emails? And the only things that I could think about AI possibly determining things right now are maybe things like send time, send time analysis to give you recommendations on when to send. But I'm talking about AI for actual determining content inside of an email. And this is where I think maybe some of the language and what we use, maybe it gets a bit confusing, especially on a survey like this, which had some similar answers. But, I think personalization and segmentation and dynamic content is one thing, but I don't consider a lot of that stuff AI. I'm talking about AI actually letting a machine determine all of the content in an email or the design of an email or something. I got to call BS on some of that. I don't think that's actually a thing happening in email right now. Maybe I'm wrong. I know there's some ESPs out there trying to do a bunch of AI stuff. I know there's Watson. I know there's Cordial. I know there's a whole bunch of other things. But if you're using AI, I'd love to know how you're actually using it. So let me know. But I have to call BS on everybody putting down AI because people can't even get something like interactive email, which is a hard enough barrier to implement that. I just don't see AI actually being a thing at all right now. Some other things. Number 4, utilizing more live content. So things like, incorporating weather data, countdown clocks, etc. I think that's always beneficial. Again, that sort of goes to the dynamic content aspect of it, personalizing it. Again, I wouldn't do those things just to do those things, but whenever it's adding an extra layer of context, I think that's really good. Or if it's especially on social engagement, things like Twitter feeds, Instagram feeds, maybe not as the feature of the email, but if you're using it to, again, enhance engagement or enhance personalization, again, it really ties back to the context of what the email design in the campaign is. But I think things like that can be helpful. But it's not like again, this is something where you're not going to include it for every single email, most likely, especially on the marketing end. Maybe there are some transactional use cases, but you want to pick your spots with this. Again, it needs to be contextual for all of your campaigns. So you're going to have to decide on a case-by-case basis. Some other things, simplifying email designs for both easier consumption and creation. I think that's always a thing. How can we simplify the message? Even if there's a lot of content in an email, which is okay. And I would offer a counter to this trend is it's okay if you have a lot of content in an email, but as long as all of that content is bite-sized, it's easy to consume, easy to scan, as long as you're making it easier for users to consume that, it's okay. But that's always a goal we should be striving for in email. This one is always a hot topic of debate, using more animation, whether GIFs, hashtag team GIF, by the way, or CSS animation. Again, just be careful if you're using GIFs. Don't go overboard. Watch out on the file size. You want to watch out for your image weight. I always like to say nowadays with the way networks are, you want to aim for no more than 1 to 2 megabytes total for all of the images in your email. If you are on a desktop centric audience mainly, you could probably get away with a little bit more. I see a lot of senders, especially retail senders in the B2C world, going up to 5 megabytes, 7 megabytes. You can get away with it, but I think it's excessive, and I just don't think it's a best practice. If you're using, or if you have a much larger mobile audience, you need to watch out because mobile devices have much weaker connections with their networks. So it's slower to download things on mobile than it is on desktop, like laptops or machines of that like. So you need to watch out for that. But again, I try to stick to the up to 1 to 2 megabytes. That's kind of a good range, at least to keep things speedy in terms of downloading off of opens. And yeah, I think animation is really engaging, whether it is animated GIFs or CSS animations. the thing about this is there's so many different use cases you could have for this. Literally everybody could use this. And it's so broad for its application and the design. So, we can't really get into specific pinpoint examples here. Hopefully when I go over all different popular emails as a part of this show that I'm doing, go back. I did popular emails December 2018. There's a lot of animation to break down in that show. So check that out. But yeah, it's a great tactic that I think everybody should definitely try to incorporate some elements of it. Coordinating email design with the campaign designs used in other channels. Yes, I think trying to standardize sort of a design system across your entire company, not just email, but that if it can span departments such as email, web, etc., having just a cohesive branding is very important. And I think that's not just an email concern. I think that's sort of an organizational challenge. Okay, this next one here is one that I had an issue with how far down the list it was. And this comes in at 20.7%. Scaling email build systems through templates, modules, snippets, partials, etc. Let me tell you this. You should not be focusing on any trend such as AI or interactive email or live content or CSS animation or any of these other things. If you do not have a strong email build or design system in place with templates, modules, snippets, partials, etc. This is absolutely critical now in 2019 to have in place to have a successful email program. I think you absolutely need to be focusing on this because you are losing so much time if you don't have this in place. This just makes things so much easier to maintain and to manage, and it makes it easier for you to get into doing these progressive enhancements that we've been talking about on the show so far, if you have that in place. So if you don't have something in place to where, let me put it to you this way, because I just had a Twitter conversation about this recently. If you can't easily change the design of all of your emails or whatever a group of emails that share the same design by a few hundred pixels, if you can't scale up or down by a few hundred pixels, either way, up or down, seamlessly with just a couple of short changes to your sort of system, then that's a fundamental problem that you have because you don't have something scalable in place. So if you don't have that in place, make that a priority for 2019, because without that, you're going to run into roadblocks all along the way with how time consuming everything is. And you'll never even be able to get to doing these cool enhancement techniques in the first place. So that was a big thing that I had. Scaling email build systems, this thing should be up near the top of the list as one of the top things to focus on if you don't have it in place already. Now, hopefully, this is just because a lot of people already have this stuff into place. But my guess is, especially looking at the B2C retail emails that are still coming in the inboxes, it probably isn't. So make that a priority if it's not. Adding progressive enhancements to create richer experiences were supported were next. And this is where I think, this is a very similar answer because CSS animation, interactive email, that's progressive enhancement. So I think the options were a little bit confusing here on this end, but yes, progressively enhanced where possible, and not every single email needs to look the same in all of the email clients. It's okay for your email to look different in different email clients. So where clients that have more support for CSS, like Apple Mail and iOS Mail, progressively enhance those environments to provide a better, more engaging experience. And for clients that don't have great support, like Outlook Windows, just provide a solid fallback. So always progressively enhance where you can, just to provide a better, and a more immersive and more engaging experience. This next one, I also had an issue with how low it was. Improving email accessibility for people with disabilities. Email accessibility in email should be a priority for you in 2019. If you are still using image-based emails, please stop. Make it a priority to make your emails be live text-based. You're using actual HTML for your text. Use semantic markup. Use H1 tags, H2 tags. Use heading tags. Use paragraph tags. Make sure you're using the proper semantic markup. This is becoming much more important now because, it's not only the rise of accessibility with screen readers, voice audio assistants. We're starting to see things like I just went over in the last show, like dark modes are now coming into emails to where if it's automatically switching and inverting your emails, it's going to look really janked if you're using a lot of images. So I had an issue with this because I know for a fact, looking at all the inboxes in my email, that accessibility has not been a very big priority for a lot of people. So please, if you aren't using semantic markup for everything in your email, make that a priority. That is a much bigger trend that you should be focusing on than things like live content or interactive email. That for sure. And this is something where I think a lot of people don't think about the other benefits to it. It improves your visibility if users are trying to search in your inbox. If any of these inbox providers should ever rank emails higher that are one, responsive, and two, can search in for items like this, like semantic markups. Search engines do this. Google does this right now. So what happens if Gmail starts doing it? I think people don't always think about those types of side effects or those types of potential consequences. I think sometimes people don't always think towards the future. Like, what are the future forward effects of the current methods we're using for implementing emails? And that's why I like using the layout approach that I use of using all divs and then just using a shadow layout fallback for Outlook. And that's because whenever Outlook decides to update their rendering engine, I can just get rid of my conditional comments in shadow layout, and I can just progressively enhance from there with the modern layout techniques for all the other clients, which I still do now. But, as CSS Grid and, Flexbox, all those things gain better and more support, I'm just using those for my email. So it just goes to the point of try to be future forward with a lot of this. And please just try to be as accessible as possible for your users. I understand it may not be the number one thing, but accessibility should always be like a top 5 thing, because you always want to provide just a good experience for all users, regardless of the environment. And if you aren't, that means you're providing a subpar experience in a lot of places. This next one, creating more one-off unique email designs that don't use a template. I guess I would say that's the danger to using build systems, right? Or if you become too templated and it becomes inflexible to a degree, you just have to watch out to how you implement some things. You don't want to create a system to where it's too inflexible that you can't customize and do more bespoke things, especially for unique campaigns. But to me, the bottom 2 items actually were the most sort of surprising and striking findings of this whole survey. So the bottom 2 ones, so the second to last one was optimizing email designs for dark mode at 8.7%, which I talked about dark mode for Apple Mail and Outlook.com on the last show of my show here on YouTube. Check it out if you haven't. And then the very last one, 7.1% came in at taking advantage of AMP for email, which is Gmail's new implementation for interactive email coming sometime Q1 of 2019. Now, this really shocked me here because Gmail has about 30% of the market share based off of emailclientmarketshare.com run by Libnus. And if you take Apple Mail and Outlook.com, those 2 clients which offer a dark mode, they only account for about 10%, and dark mode is a non-default mode. So right now, this means that email geeks are saying that they would rather spend time optimizing their email designs for non-default modes for 2 clients that make up 10% of the market share, compared to investing time into learning a new markup language, developing a separate MIME type in a separate email just for Gmail that has 30% of the market share. To me, this is a major denouncement of AMP for email. And now maybe some people checked off interactive email at the top, which was, a number 2 trend, and they didn't go down and look at AMP for email and didn't select it. But to me, that was really surprising. And I'm going to spin it because I obviously did. One of my predictions for 2019 was that AMP for email would not take off. So, but I was just surprised. I would have thought that AMP for email would have been much, much higher than this. I'm surprised that dark mode beat it out. And certainly maybe there is a margin of error. I think it still goes to show, though, that it's very low on the list right now with all of its barriers to adoptions. Currently, email designers and developers just aren't eager to implement AMP for email at all. So I think that's a major, major denouncement. Maybe it'll change if, more ESPs get support for it. But right now, it looks like there's just no appetite for it. So to me, that was a very, very big finding of this whole survey here. And then just to go back and take a look at the top email design trends for 2018, again, creating interactive email experiences was one. Focusing on more personalization was number two. So the top two are the same. Using shorter, more bite-sized content was three. Building stronger narratives and storytelling was four. Adding progressive enhancements was number five. And then you see a bunch of these things here. It was interesting. Scaling email build systems was still down at 20%, the exact same. There was no change there. I think that needs to increase. And improving email accessibility was basically the same this year to last year as well. Slight dip this year, but I think some of that just probably had to do with more options. Interesting, there was no mention here on this year's. There was sending more text-only emails was at 12% in the bottom for the design trends last year. No mention of that this year, but so, maybe people are trying to focus in more on the actual design side of HTML emails, but I actually sort of like the design trends for 2018 more than 2019. So again, just to recap, I think personalization is always there, and that's always a challenge. Interactive email, you got to pick your spots and be careful with it. I want to know if you're using AI at all, because I'm kind of calling BS on that not being a thing at all right now in email. Live content, again, pick and choose your spots. GIFs and CSS animation, great to use, a lot of broad application. Again, pick your spots. But again, I think the things that should be higher than all of those things, scaling email build systems and improving email accessibility. Definitely do it. But yeah, I would agree. Definitely optimize your email designs for dark mode over AMP for email. Do that for sure, because I don't like AMP for email implementation. Don't think we should be supporting it at all. So what design trends are you focusing on for 2019? Leave a comment below or tweet me at Kevin Mandeville on Twitter. I want to know from you, what are your trends for 2019? What are the things that you are trying to focus in on? I'd love to collect your answers. If I can aggregate some, I'll share them back out as well. All right, well, that's been this edition of the show. Reminder, we go live every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern time, right here on YouTube. And you can subscribe both here on YouTube, smash that subscribe button, but also subscribe to my email newsletter, kevinmandeville.com/newsletter. All right, that's been this year's trends. We'll see how it plays out. Catch you next time, email geeks.